Now, a majority of Africans have access to the internet, but the challenge now is to broaden access and ensure that costs are brought down. Now, joining me on the line to discuss investment opportunity in that space in West Africa is Carsten Philipson, Principal Investment Officer at the International Finance Corporation. We've got a couple of minutes, Carsten, to talk about this. Give me a sense just of how big this opportunity is, because we know mobile has spread and a lot of people have connectivity that they didn't have before.
Well, thank you for having me on the program. We think that the opportunity is about as big as the opportunity in the late 1990s when the first cellular networks were rolling out across Africa. There's a very pent-up demand for access to the internet and access to data. And frankly, I think we've only scratched or seen the top of the iceberg here. There is a lot of unmet demand in the markets that will hopefully be met over the next several years, but it will take a concerted effort of both industry and regulators to get the bulk of the population connected to the internet.
Yeah, so let's talk about what needs to be done from the government side, particularly because then we know they need to create the environment.
Mm-hmm. That is correct. We think in many places there is a conducive environment for investments into the internet sector. Obviously, there's going to be a range of technologies that will be used to reach the population. In some areas it will be wireless, in other areas it will be fixed wire. And the government has to make sure that there's ample frequencies available to operators so that they can roll out these services, particularly in the rural areas.
Yeah.
And they have to ensure that operators can build and install fixed networks in the metropolitan areas. So they have to allow for people to lay cables and occasionally dig up streets, which is necessary to put the infrastructure in place.
Yeah, tell me who's moving faster than who?
Well, we see sort of bifurcated markets. On one hand, you have the existing telco operators who are getting increasingly interested in this space. And on the other hand, you have smaller operators just focusing on broadband itself that are quite nimble and are targeting specific areas or regions or even areas of a city.
Yeah.
And they're doing quite a good job as well. So it's a healthy competition in most markets.
What about in terms of governments and themselves and countries? Who is moving fast? Is it Nigeria? Is it Ghana?
Nigeria and Ghana are probably the true front runners, as they have traditionally been in this space. But we do see some of the other countries starting to close in on them. So we're encouraged. We see countries in the Francophone-speaking part of Africa that are starting to close the gap.
Now, what about cost, Carsten? That's always a big issue, isn't it? Particularly in Africa, where we know we're talking vast distances.
Yes. Well, cost is always an issue when you have these massive capital expenditures going in. What has happened so far is the focus has been on delivering ample data to the coastline. So by making landfall with a number of the subsea cables, most countries are connected to one or several cables today. The issue is how do you drive the traffic from the landing point inland?
Yeah. And
that will require quite a bit of capex. I'm not sure that there's a lot of focus on cost savings at this point in time. If you can build it, the customers will come. So the focus is more on how fast can you roll out and build the pipeline to the interior of the countries.
Yeah. Carsten Philipson, Principal Investment Officer at the International Finance Corporation, talking to us from